Essentially, I had my children very young. I have a son who has special needs. So I
Hmm.
was out of the workforce for a while. And then when I was kind of ready to get back into the workforce, my husband
Hmm.
has worked in the roofing in the commercial end of the industry for his entire life. And his company had an opening. So I was like, you know
Hmm.
what? I think I would like to give this a shot. And it was just a desk job. It was just a basic administrative, answering phones, clericals, desk job. And I
Hmm.
took it and I started to get my feet wet in the industry. And I was like, you know what? I really like
Years,
this. And
and when you entered, I can tell that the industry was quite different back then because there were not much women doing roofing.
the industry has definitely changed where it's more accepting to females in the industry, certainly as, times are more modern now and what have you. But back when I was doing it, probably in my, it was definitely, I would say it was like, it was the boys club
So,
still,
have you ever encountered male ego? Because I can say that many times you are the sales manager and you have sales reps out there, or anyone in the entire 15, 16 years. You come across time when even me as male have a male ego that we feel inferior when we are discussing something or when we are seeking help from someone, and especially if it's women. Back in time 15, 16 years ago, I don't think so many people would have come to you.
if you're rude or disrespectful to me, I'm going to give it back to you. I might do it in a more respectful and professional manner, but I'm going to let you know immediately, like, I have boundaries. You're not going to cross them. I had to earn respect. You're going to give me the respect I give you. If not, there's the door.
Time, or let's just say someone is young and they are getting into this, do you feel that women particularly have this kind of sword hanging over their head or an unconscious pressure that if they do any mistake they have more chances of being eradicated from the project or the team?
One of the companies in the past that I worked for, I did have that experience, right? So I was in my learning stage, and you think you know everything and you don't, and you're young. And I worked with a lot of older men that had been in the industry already for their 20 or 30 years, and they just laughed at me. There was many times they didn't take me seriously and made me feel really small, which you have to create that thick skin.
Because you
So
mentioned 2 or 3 times that you have predefined boundaries in your brain. So, what are these boundaries?
everybody's boundaries are different. Everybody's limits of what they're willing to tolerate are going to be different. My skin is pretty thick, so sometimes maybe I let it go a little bit too far before I finally say enough's enough. But know your boundary of when you're either being abused, taken advantage of, mistreated, disrespected, and let them know real quick that you're not going to tolerate that and gain their respect from that. That's definitely a really important boundary to
You,
have.
how do you feel women can become better managers and leaders
We
in
need to be
roofing?
better listeners. I'm trying to work on that myself. Sometimes I tend to have so much to say that I have to reel it back in, and I'm trying. My goal for this year with myself is to listen more.
Hey everyone, welcome to the latest episode of the Roofing Millionaires podcast, the only roofing podcast where we don't promote anyone and we don't sell you anything. In this episode, we are sitting down with Shawn Morris from AZ Roofing in Ohio, and we have discussed how the roofing industry has evolved over time to incorporate more women and what kind of expectations you should have if you are a woman entering into the roofing industry. Not only this, we have also discussed how women can become better leaders and managers in roofing, and how working with men is totally different from working with women. Whether you are a man or a woman watching this episode, the experiences and the knowledge Shawn has shared will definitely relate to you. Do like and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want us to bring more roofing experts like this on the show, who can help you listen and learn the things that are not discussed most of the times. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Roofing Millionaires podcast, Shawn. It's great to have you on the show today. I hope you had a great Easter. So, how has been 2025 for you so far, both professionally and personally?
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me. So 2025 so far has been pretty good. In the roofing and professional aspect of the industry as a whole has definitely been different this year. Market is
Hmm.
different. Everybody's a roofer nowadays. Market's super saturated here. There's weather's a factor.
Hmm.
I think the current administration is a large factor. Materials have gone up tremendously when they were already expensive, things such as that. So the business that I have here, Easy Roofing, We've had a great last few years in the
Hmm.
industry. We've gone from a $3 million company to a $10 million company in like a 3.5 year
Hmm.
span.
Hmm.
So this year we're kind of taking a back seat a little bit and just having more of stability.
Hmm.
Especially with the way the market is, it's actually been a really good time for us to kind of like just take a seat, revamp a little bit, look at our software programs, look at our business
Hmm.
structure, model plan, things like that, and make any necessary changes that
Hmm.
we need to make at the current time. So we've kind of been doing that. And then
Hmm.
the weather here has changed also. So we're going into our busy season, kind of getting out of the trenches. So business is starting to pick up there. Personally, I think I'm doing
Hmm.
pretty good.
Awesome. Okay. As far as I know, you are the sales manager at AZ Roofing, and I want to know more about your background. Like, how did you end up in roofing?
By accident. So I've been
Okay.
in the, yeah, so been in the industry for probably close to 15, 16 years.
Hmm.
I feel like it's getting more to be the norm to have women in the industry now. But, when I first started, it was very uncommon to really see a female unless she was behind a desk.
Hmm.
Essentially, I had my children very young. I have a son who has special needs. So I
Hmm.
was out of the workforce for a while. And then when I was kind of ready to get back into the workforce, my husband
Hmm.
has worked in the roofing in the commercial end of the industry for his entire life. And his company had an opening. So I was like, you know
Hmm.
what? I think I would like to give this a shot. And it was just a desk job. It was just a basic administrative, answering phones, clerical desk job. And I
Hmm.
took it and I started to get my feet wet in the industry. And I was like, you know what? I really like this. And
Hmm.
really curious about it. I would take any opportunity that I had to learn something new. I worked my way up. I ended up being the administrative assistant under the president there.
Hmm.
And then I got, more involved in understanding the industry, the materials in the business, the
Hmm.
different aspects of the business with the field versus the office. My husband was in the field, so I would learn a great deal from him versus myself, who was kind of on the other spectrum at white collar versus blue collar kind of thing. So
Hmm.
and I just was really good at it. And the owner was fantastic. He was a great teacher. And then he
Hmm.
ended up selling the company. And I
Okay.
invited myself to another owner who took over. And
Hmm.
I invited myself to leave
Hmm.
and didn't really care for who was kind of coming on board. And
Hmm.
took a little break. And then I started to kind of get into not the retail, excuse me, the residential end of the business.
Hmm.
It's kind of when everybody calls it the storm chasing or whatever kind of hit the market with the laws that kind of changed a little bit. And I was like, you know what? I really like this. So
Hmm.
I took a job on at another company and I got involved in kind of like the insurance law and insurance code end of the
Hmm.
spectrum with fighting with adjusters and was really good at that and enjoy the
Hmm.
fight very much. And then just kind of went from there. I've done a little bit of everything. And
Hmm.
that company, unfortunately, did go out of business.
Okay.
That's a long story,
Hmm.
but I ended up kind of coming on board here. The owner here wanted me for a while. So I came on board here at AZ Roofing and I've been here for
Hmm.
like about the last 3 years and I absolutely love it.
Hmm.
And I'm doing sales management now. So a little bit different.
Okay. Okay. Why did you choose sales particularly? Like you are doing a desk job. So what was that transition?
I think it's because the owner here wanted me really bad. He
Hmm.
wanted me to come on and do like supplementing and fight with the adjusters and things such as that for him. And then he didn't really have anybody managing his team, right? Because he was still in the $1 to $3 million mark in sales and they needed guidance and structure at that point because he was kind of like in that in between stage. And I think that I just had the personality for it. He liked the way that I was organized and structured and kind of assigned me to that. And then it kind of just went
Hmm.
from there where I ended up just kind of taking over that department and managing everybody. And we've been pretty successful. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Okay. And you just mentioned that you have been into roofing for last 15 or 16 years. And when you entered, I can tell that the industry was quite different back then because there were not much women doing roofing. So how do you see the difference like right now? What is the difference between in the industry right now and back when you entered the industry?
So I thought that was a great
Hmm.
question.
Hmm.
So listen, I mean, the industry has definitely changed where it's more accepting to females in the industry, certainly as, times are more modern now and what have you. But back when I was doing it, probably in my, it was definitely, I would say it was like, it was the boys club still,
Hmm.
and I didn't really have an issue with that because I think that I actually work better with men than I think I do women. I think men are definitely easier to work with,
Hmm.
super cut and dry for the most part. There's
Hmm.
not all that drama and well, sometimes there is. Sometimes men can be babies and silly, but I definitely got a lot of pushback to kind of stay in my
Hmm.
place over the years. It just depended on the person. You had guys that were great, that were respectful to me, that were happy to,
Hmm.
teach me and guide me. And then you had, I ran into situations where men were inappropriate,
Hmm.
but I'm a pretty tough cookie. So I kind of put them back in their place. So I just worked my way through it. And then I gained their respect.
Hmm.
And I think once you gain the respect of men and they have
Hmm.
confidence in you that you can do the job, I
Hmm.
think other men in the industry kind of vibe off that. They see that other men are respecting you and they follow suit. So,
Hmm.
and now I'm very well known in the industry and I think that helps me tremendously.
Okay, I agree with you on that. Females are at times more dramatic to work with, and that was a question that I had to brought up later in the interview. But I'm asking this right now. Like you just mentioned that if you earn the respect of men, it is a lot easier to work with them. And I see in most Facebook groups these days that a lot of women who are entering into roofing, they are chasing attention instead of respect. So what do you say about that? Like you get the attention, but there is the respect element that is missing all the time, and they don't know or they don't understand the essence of working, and that's why they feel that getting attention is the easy way to move forward. However, from what you have just mentioned, I get a feeling of resilience from you. Like you are working on a desk job, but you still made it till here. It means that back in time, you must have faced pushbacks as well, and it was a male dominant industry, but you did some things right. So, what do you feel are the things that women are doing wrong, particularly these days, or what are the traps they have been fallen into, considering this hype on social media and the videos and all these things?
Great question. I think that for starters, like your looks and being a woman is only going to get you so far, right? So you have to do the homework, you have to put the work in, you have to be intelligent, you have to be able to articulate yourself when you open your mouth. At the end of the day, everybody wants to make a sale. So if you're standing beside someone who's your counterpart, especially if they're male, and you're opening your mouth and you sound like an idiot, no one's going to take you seriously and sell you the job. If you're opening up your mouth and you're able to pick up where they left off, or you're able to educate someone, you're going to gain their respect, right? They're going to see past the fact that you're a female. They're going to look at you based on your intelligence and it's going to go well for you. I think I had to do that often. I had to really prove that I was willing to put the time in, I was willing to put the effort in, probably work twice as hard, because obviously people would select a male over me anytime until they started to realize that Shawn really knows what she's talking about. She does a really good job. She puts the hours in. She's the first one there, the last one to go home. She helps out where she can. She's always in the training classes.
Hmm.
She's always asking questions. So that all really helped a lot. Plus, I had my husband. I was very fortunate to have my
Hmm.
husband to kind of pick his brain often about
Hmm.
things I didn't know or understand. And he would take the time to teach me. So even when I was not at work, I was still learning, after hours by picking his brain. So I was very fortunate to have that as well. I don't know if that answered your question
Okay.
or not.
Yeah, that did answer my question a little bit. I want to ask you, are you like this since beginning, or there are some events that helped you learn this? Because what I see, like I know Chelsea who works with TLC Roofing in Texas, and she is a graceful woman too, like you. And there are two groups. Like one is too much focused on attention, and the other is focused on respect and putting in the hard work. Whereas the first group, if you put a dominant male on them, they will say that I'm not getting the chances and I am being ignored here. However, you just mentioned that you have to work twice as hard as you can to actually get that respect. So what brought you to this realization?
I think observing, right? So you pay attention and you observe and you watch your surroundings and you kind of see what does gain that respect, If you let your counterpart or your whoever that you may be working with fail and kind of learn from their mistakes. So we say fail forward, right? We all have to learn from the things that we fail at. And if you pay attention to those things and kind of educate yourself, like I said, I really think it's all in a lot of it is just in the education. And you are able to maybe correct a situation or go in and turn something around. So, like you asked, what may have been my turning point? There were a few situations where, there were gentlemen in a situation that they could not get the sale or they couldn't correct
Hmm.
a major roof leak or problem that we had. And I was able to go in there and kind of just manage the situation, reel the building owner or the customer back in and, figure out what we could do to resolve the situation and put the fire out. I'm very good at troubleshooting. I think that helps a
I
lot.
can feel
Um,
that. Yes.
yeah. So, and then, if you're friendly and the old saying, you get more bees with honey than vinegar, that helps, if you kind of just, because most of the time people are just frustrated. It's misplaced anger, and their emotions. And if you can kind of navigate through that, you can usually come to a resolution where I think men maybe not have as much patience with that, where women might be better at navigating that. That probably helps as well.
Yes, and I feel that you have read psychology in depth, maybe, and the male psychology particular. So, have you ever encountered male ego? Because I can say that many times you are the sales manager and you have sales reps out there, or anyone in the entire 15, 16 years. You come across time when even me as male have a male ego that we feel inferior when we are discussing something or when we are seeking help from someone, and especially if it's women. Back in time 15, 16 years ago, I don't think so many people would have come to you. So how did you handle the male ego, or how do you handle it now if you come across it?
That's a good question. I do deal with male ego on a daily basis. I have a team of all men. And they vary in ages from my
Hmm.
youngest sales rep is just turned 21 and my
Hmm.
oldest sales rep is 51. So
Hmm.
it's across the board.
Hmm.
But to be honest with you, it's really, I take it all in stride and sarcasm. Like I give it back, as
Hmm.
kind and as respectful as I can be.
Hmm.
If you're rude or disrespectful to me, I'm going to give it back to you. I might do it in a more respectful and professional manner, but I'm going to let you know immediately, like I have boundaries, you're not going to cross them. I had to earn
Hmm.
respect. You're going to give me the respect I give you. If not, there's the door, like I lay the law down when it's necessary. I'm not going to take any disrespect or abuse. No, and then if I feel like it's a situation that's misplaced or, maybe someone's just having a really bad day,
Hmm.
I have no problem approaching them and pulling them in my office and say, let's talk about this. Especially in this
Hmm.
industry, you
Hmm.
really have a lot of what I call the misfits, right? So
Yes.
this industry is a lot of people that really had no other place to go. And you can come into this industry with no education and make a life and a career for yourself. And a lot of people have done that. And they
Hmm.
bring baggage with them and different things that they go through in their life. It's a large industry of drug addicts, alcoholics. People may have family issues or what have you. And sometimes it does take a little bit of a different touch to kind of touch on that and just reel people back in and say, what can we do to help you?
Hmm.
How do we better things for you? And usually, if we're in the business of making people's lives better, the
Hmm.
success kind of comes with it, right? Because then you create a bond and trust with people. So you have to have a little patience in that recipe as well.
Okay,
And then
let's
also
say
know when to
someone.
fire,
Yes.
sorry, also know when to fire someone when necessary.
Okay, let's say someone is watching or listening to this episode and she's a woman and confused about all these things, like how to handle the male ego part. And at the same time, I agree with you that most people who come to this industry, they are coming from rock bottom, like they have seen the worst phases of their lives. So how would you advise them to handle this part? Because at time you have to put yourself down and you have to put companies interests over here. So let's just say there is an hypothetical scenario that someone comes to you and they are not behaving in a way that you would want them to, but you have to teach them something and you have to put the company's interests above you. So what process or what strategy would you adopt?
So I typically what I'll do is make a success
Hmm.
plan, right?
Hmm.
So I'll pull them in my office. I'm not immediately firing someone unless it's something astronomical, right?
Hmm.
They're just drinking and driving or something that's illegal or whatever, that's different. But if they're failing, emotions are involved. If they're not closing sales, if they're a mess, if, they're not hitting their goals, so on and so forth, if they're being disrespectful, insubordinate, or what have you, I'm still sitting them down and I'm picking their brain, right? What's going on? Let's get to the root of the problem. All right. So maybe what I'm putting on you is too much. So maybe we need to size that a little bit. And let's create a success
Hmm.
plan. Let's find out what your
Hmm.
goals are. Maybe you have
Hmm.
let's find what your weaknesses are. Maybe you have an
Hmm.
organizational issue. If I can kind of help them revamp that and bring them back to the drawing board and create a better plan, plan of success for them,
Hmm.
maybe that will help them be more successful. And then in turn, the business is more successful. So it's
Hmm.
really a case by case situation. Everybody's an individual, and I know it's more difficult as a company gets larger, but you really have to kind of do that and assess. And you have to have a little intuition, right? In the
Hmm.
business as well. You have to be able to kind of read people and be a people person and kind of know, geez, 3 days in, I could tell this is probably not going to work out,
Hmm.
versus all right, this guy really wants to make this happen. He really wants to, or girl wants to do this, but
Hmm.
they're missing some pieces. What can I do to help them be successful? So you have to kind of
Hmm.
figure out where that boundary is and then put that plan into effect. Or you cut ties and just say, listen, it's
Hmm.
not going to work. This isn't for you. I wish you the best.
And I am personally very much liking this conversation because you are being a helper to them instead of being an opponent. Like you just said, that if someone comes to you and they are being disrespectful, you would reply to them, but more of in a sarcastic way. And as a man, what I can say is that you are just diffusing them. Like they are coming with their fury, but you are diffusing them. So do you feel that it comes from the feminine part of you, because not a lot of men can do this?
I do. I think it also comes from the fact that I'm a mother. That
Hmm.
probably helps. Also, I've been in this industry for so long, like just not much shocks and surprises you after a while. I've kind of seen it all from drugs, alcohol, violence, people not showing up, people having addiction issues, just people dying, people having accidents. So when you kind of are desensitized to that, like someone just being sarcastic to you or being a little disrespectful is kind of just really not that big a deal to an extent. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a big deal, and I address it, but it's not the end of the world. So let's figure out what's going on. And then, yeah, I'll be kind of a smart ass back to them, excuse my French. And then I'm pulling them in my office. What's going on with you? Why are you speaking to me that way? I'm not going to tolerate it. I still draw the boundary, but then kind of figure out what the issue is. And I have to tell you, I get a lot of apologies and the guys appreciate the fact that I take the time to kind of check in with them, and they become successful. Someone gave a shit. They cared.
Yes, and you are creating that environment for them so they can open up. And is that the reason, what I believe now, after talking to you, that we should have more women in sales, because you can handle what's going on with your team. At the same time, there must be some feminine energy that you bring to the homeowners as well, like their wives or the women who are in that house.
Absolutely. And I'm sure they look at me almost like a mother figure, because everybody's like, "Oh, you're the leader, you're in charge, you're the manager." Yes, I
Hmm.
am. And none of my guys have a problem with it. They all actually told me that I'm probably one of the better bosses that they've had in the past, considering most of them have probably had male bosses. I have never myself had a female boss. I've only had male bosses, and I've had a really crappy boss. And then the boss I have now is fantastic. So just depends on the person, I guess, and their life experience.
So earlier in the interview, you just mentioned that it is easier to work with men instead of working with women nowadays. So where does that come from?
I don't think men are as competitive with the male versus female as women are versus women, right? So
Yes, yes.
I personally have gotten to a place, so I'm 47, almost 48 years old. So I've been around
Hmm.
for a little bit, and I feel like when I was younger, probably I would have been more competitive in a female environment. Where now I'm in a
Hmm.
situation where I'm confident in who I am. I know I'm well versed in the industry. My reputation in the industry is good. I'm well educated in the market. So I don't
Hmm.
feel like I have anybody to be competitive with. Like I am what you see is what you get. So I don't have that competitive force as far as with myself as a woman in the industry with counterparts being out there. I actually love that there's other women that are our they'll work for our competitors, and we all do try to
Hmm.
embrace each other to an extent, which is why we have what's called the National Women in Roofing Foundation.
Hmm.
So that's really important to me. I'm a member of that as well, where it's women in roofing from all different aspects of life and different jobs, whether it's desk work, whether you're on a roof, right? So
Hmm.
we support each other in that, and I think that's fantastic. But don't get it wrong, I'm still competitive when it comes to making sure that we're successful with our sales, we're beating our
Hmm.
competitor, and we're coming out on top.
Hmm.
But that can all be done, in a professional, gentle manner. So
There is a difference between competency and jealousy, I would say. And I have figured out from what you just said, and what's my personal opinion is that I have a lot of Facebook friends who are roofers, and particularly in men, when I see them, they are working on themselves, they are working on their self reflection, they are working on their self improvement, self mastery, spiritualism, their mindset, body, and all these things. But when I look at women particularly, they are not focusing on these aspects, and they don't discover that ego part of them. Like they never come across that self reflection, that they have this inbuilt ego in them that is kind of putting them in a place of competition with other women. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I think that that might be another reason why myself might be in this industry and stand out a little bit differently is because I will say that I have done what these other gentlemen are doing. So the other part of my life has been large in the fitness industry, and I've done a lot of what's called OCR racing, which is obstacle course racing, and I've done a lot of really high intense stuff where I've been up in the mountains, kind of tore my body apart, and all you're left with is kind of your mind and your spirit and your soul, and you have to push yourself. And like you said, you find out a lot about yourself when you rip everything else away, and it really brings you to a whole different level and mindset. And you kind of figure out what's important and what's not important, and having a healthy body and having a healthy mind and digging deep and figuring out who you really are and what's important and not important is a really great place to be in your professional career and in your personal life. And it helps you be a better person. I agree with that. And a lot of women are doing that.
Amazing. Yeah.
They're going to Starbucks and getting a coffee. And I'm not saying those women aren't successful, and I don't go to Starbucks either, but like their priorities might, let me correct that before I
Yes.
offend anybody, but
Yes.
their priorities might be different, right? So
Hmm.
maybe they're getting home, take care of their family, and that's okay. That's great.
Yes.
Or they're exhausted from trying to make their place in the industry. And maybe they
Hmm.
just didn't have anybody to help give them direction or the tools that they need to maybe get to that level. So that's why we should all kind of come together so we can meet, and then maybe I can help someone, and they can give me direction and that their department. I don't know. So
Sean, when I was doing my research on you, I found that you are in sales, and I was confused that I have so many sales conversation in this podcast that I didn't want to have another sales conversation with you. I wanted to bring something that is valuable to women in particular, like an episode or something that teaches them like what is the way forward in roofing and how should they carry themselves. And I think you are the right person for that, but we will bring that later on. I want to share something personal with you. You just mentioned that you have a son with special needs. I have a younger brother who has cerebral palsy. I don't know if you know about that disease. He is not able to walk since childhood, since birth. And my most of my like my generosity or my humbleness comes from seeing him, and because he didn't ask God to create him like this, but that was a choice. So at times we don't have a choice either in our lives, but we just don't get into the self reflection mode. So, do you feel that whatever you are or whatever your thoughts are, they are somewhere linked to your son as well?
that's great. Yeah, definitely. And I am familiar with cerebral palsy, by the way. My best friend's son was born with that, and he's a great kid. My son's disabilities is more learning disabled, and he's definitely on the spectrum a little bit, but
Hmm.
my son's actually 31 now, and he's super successful. I just want to give him a little shout out for that. those kids can be successful as well, right? But like to
Yes.
reel it back in, I believe that our success and our drive, you and I, and even I don't know you, but I can tell probably comes from our traumas. You know, most people experience a type of trauma in their life, whether it may be what you've gone through with the birth of your son. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing because, like you said, it definitely humbles us and teaches us so much about ourselves. And you kind of figure out what's really important and not important. But I've been through some stuff in my life, and most of the people I would say that are extremely successful or have success or even that have the fire and drive to push themselves and the limits usually have a fuel behind them or something that's happened in their life to push them to with to have the drive and the humbleness that they do. And I had a tough home life growing up. My mom, who since passed away, had a lot of mental health care issues. So I had a very difficult home life growing up. And then to my adulthood with having my own son who ended up having special needs kind of spilled over to that. So I think I kind of had to just be a survivor and strive and work really hard at everything most of my life. And I think that's poured over into my professional life. You just kind of take those things we adopt and that we adapt to, and you kind of mold them and put them into your work ethic and your work life. And it works for a lot of us. So,
Yes. And you know that the traumas that we have, I feel that we have two ways in front of us always. The one is right and the other is wrong. Like if I am a man or if I am a female, based on my traumas, I can either be a victim or I can take control of myself and I can fight the circumstances and I can win that battles that are in myself and I can conquer all those torments and turmoils inside. That brings me to roofing, back to roofing, that it is a profession that gives you a lot of money, and now you have two ways. You can either spend it whatever way you want, or you can build a life out of this that is based on values, based on all the good things that the world needs. So what is your advice to someone, or a girl particular, or a woman who wants to get into roofing or who is new to this industry, on financial management and how to just make these kind of decisions when you have both the rights and the wrongs, because most of the times we don't even know that we are going into the wrong path.
so I would say to them, whether they're going to start their own business or work for someone, they really need to do their homework, right? And they really need to make sure that if they're going to work for a business or an organization, that they make sure they're working for the right person. People seldom forget that you're interviewing someone as much as they're interviewing you, because this is going to be your family for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day or whatever, how long it is your day is. And you want to make sure that you are working for and with the right people. This business is cutthroat. It's super competitive. There's a lot of slimy, awful people in this industry that will step over your body to get ahead, and not look back. And you kind of have to have that armor and protect yourself or know what to kind of veer away from and who that you're going to represent. Um, and just be careful of your choices and definitely protect yourself and make sure that you are working for the right people that are going to look out for you, that are going to give you bonuses you deserve, that you're going to be financially achieve and retrieve what you're deserving of. You have to know your worth, right? And then if you're not, if you are and you working for a company and you're not, if you're not getting paid what you should be getting paid, or you are not, your voice isn't being heard, make the decision to leave sooner than later. There's someone that will hear your voice and listen to you if you have something to bring to the table. And then in the other aspect of it, I think if you are going to start your own business, yeah, you have to definitely do your homework, make sure that you're going to find your place in the market where you can kind of lay roots and a foundation, and do your homework with that before you start a business and financially put yourself out there, and make sure you have the right people working for you as well. That's a tough question. We could spend a lot of time on that. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we'll need a second episode for these questions particularly. You just mentioned that at times you have to put your armors on, or not at times, almost all of the time, because I feel that as humans we have our armors on ourselves all the times, every single second, because we don't like to be vulnerable in front of people. So is there any moment or time when you felt that the armor you have put on is weak or isn't strong enough and you need to strengthen it?
Yeah. I've had some pretty bad days, I think, where I felt like I was maybe failing my team, or when we may lose somebody from our team or from the industry, if you're a good manager and a good leader, right? Because we're
Mm-hmm.
essentially leaders. We're not just managing people, we're leading them as well. You have to assess yourself and ask yourself, what did I do wrong, or what could I have done better to help this person or help them, make them be more successful? And if you're not doing that, you're doing your business and yourself a disservice, because we're constantly trying to improve ourselves in our business. So
Mm-hmm.
I had some low moments where I felt like I could have done better, and maybe kind of put my armor on and protected myself a little bit and shielded myself
Mm-hmm.
and felt a little sorry for myself and tried to figure out what I could have done better. And then I kind of just had to be like, you know what? I'm human. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
perfect. I'm going to make mistakes. Learn from this. Just, Shawn, you need to learn from this and do better next time so it doesn't happen again. Or maybe I did do the right thing and it's really has nothing to do with me. So yeah, you just have to make sure you do a good check-in, and then, kind of when to put the armor on, when to take it off. A little self-preservation is always good, I think.
Okay, and how do you figure this out? Like, you have to just move this thing away or let it pass over, or you have to deal with this?
I think there's different variables that go into that. I think it comes down to probably conversations I've had with my peers or other people in the industry. What are you guys doing? What would you have done in this situation? I'm always
Mm-hmm.
open for feedback because I don't know everything. And sometimes people can put stuff in perspective for you, and open your mind in different directions to maybe look at something in a different perspective that maybe you weren't seeing because your mind's clouded
Mm-hmm.
by what you may feel your failures are, right? So where someone else might point out why they think you did what you did, or maybe that the decision you made was the right one. And then maybe you get a little bit of your confidence back. And then, you have to move on from it as well at some point, and just tell yourself, I did the best I could, So, and learn, like I said, you have to learn from it.
Okay. And do you have any kind of pressure or unconscious pressure on your mind as well, because you are in an industry, like not right now because you are 47 and you know that you are expert at what you do, but back in time, or let's just say someone is young and they are getting into this, do you feel that women particularly have this kind of sword hanging over their head, or an unconscious pressure that if they do any mistake they have more chances of being eradicated from the project or the team?
Absolutely. Oh, most definitely. One of the companies in the past that I worked for, I did have that experience, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I was in my learning stage, and you think you know everything and you don't, and you're young. And I worked with a lot of older men that had been in the industry already for their 20 or 30 years, and they just laughed at me. There was many times they didn't take me seriously, and made me feel really small, which you have to create that thick skin. So do you give up and walk away, or do you keep going? It's just going to depend on how tough you are. And that's where I think, like we talked about, our traumas and our fuel and whatever pushes us to keep going. And then, it depends on your support system as well. My husband and I have been married for almost 30 years, and he's been fantastic. He's always told me, don't let them see you. Don't let them see you fail. Don't let them see you cry. Don't let them see you, vulnerable. You're tougher than that. You've got this. You're feeling sorry for yourself right now. Learn from your mistakes. Get up. Tomorrow's a new day. Put that armor back on and go out there and kick the day's ass, and you got this. And I think I adopted that attitude over the years, just being in the industry, and tomorrow's a new day. We'll try again. Try again. You know, Support system's important as well. But yeah, and then after a
And
while, these guys see that you keep
yes,
coming for them, and then they leave you alone. She's not going to give up.
yes.
Either you work with her or you don't. you know?
Okay. And you know what? The good thing about your journey is that you always have a support system for you. And you just mentioned earlier as well, like if you feel that something is fishy and something is wrong, you just walk out of that company and you just have a new path or a new way or work with someone else. So that covers that part as well. Like if you don't have a support system and if you are listening to this conversation and you are confused, you just need to walk out and God will have better plans for you. Considering that, I want to ask you, let's say you are in charge of the roofing industry overall, what are the things you would change in men and in women both?
Boy, that's a loaded question. I think that we definitely should have more women in the field. I really do. I think
Hmm.
that, and don't get me wrong, I love the men that I work with. I have a lot of respect for many of them in this industry. I've learned so much from them and I appreciate everything about them. But I just think that we tend as women to be more detail oriented. And I
Hmm.
think we could do a great job in the sales aspect of it, just as the whole package.
Hmm.
And there's not a lot of women in the field because I think there's that strength factor with climbing and carrying
Hmm.
ladders and getting out of roofs and things like that. But I think women could do a lot, could do good, more women in the field, versus I already know women can be the CFO and CEOs. So, we have plenty of
Hmm.
those. We're good with that. That's a no-brainer, but just women knowing that, they could dominate any aspect of the industry as long as they educate themselves well enough. But yeah. And then men, I think that they should maybe take a back seat to that a little bit and maybe try their chance behind a desk or, you know,
Hmm.
perhaps educating themselves more and working with the women that are in their industry
Hmm.
or that may be in their business and being open to that and giving it a chance, you know what I mean? To see what they have to offer and bring to the table as well.
Cool. And I agree with you on that. I personally believe that women are far more creative than men, and they just have this flow of ideas that we normally don't have. Maybe our brains are not wired like that. Let's just talk about your sales experience for a while. Do you have any stories or any events where you brought your feminine energy to the sale and it just worked? Like oftentimes we have husband and wives, a couple, they are trying to dodge you, they are trying to put the decision on wife, or the wife is trying to put the decision on the husband. It's like a tennis ball that he is pushing to her and she is playing back. So how do you handle that? Do you have any story or any event where you stepped in and you just put the ball out of the park?
Sure, there's a bunch of stories. I would say generally my name, first of all, has been very helpful in this industry because I have a boy name. So
Hmm.
typically when I call somebody or I go to their house to diffuse a situation, they're expecting a male, right?
Hmm.
So they're already shock value there. So they're like, I thought you were a guy. So now
Hmm.
already their guard is down, right? And I can play right into that, crack a joke, lighten the mood, and then I just go right into it. Listen, I heard you that you're unhappy. I'm
Hmm.
sorry that you're unhappy.
Hmm.
Let's try to figure this out together. What can we do to resolve the issue? And then I'll go into it from there. And I've been pretty successful with that. I sell the company, I sell our partnership with Owens Corning that we have, I sell the warranty, and then I sell myself. And that's I think the biggest aspect of it. And then, when you open your mouth and you're educated and you are letting them know that, we're a valuable organization who's going to be here next year to service you versus a chuck in a truck that's only been in business for a year that probably won't be in business next year. They think about that and then realize that maybe I will pay a couple dollars more to go ahead and go with this organization. And I'm trustworthy, so uh, you gain their trust.
Hmm.
And then we've had situations also where it's been really emotional, where you have people that have no money. They're in a really bad situation with their roof. It's leaking. They might have a hole in it. They're
Hmm.
devastated. They lost their job. Their family member has cancer. And
Hmm.
I fight tooth and nail with the insurance company to get their roof approved. I go to war for them, right? I put my battle hat on and you
Hmm.
end up getting love from them. The person's in tears hugging you. Thank you so much. You're their hero. You've helped them. That's where the
Hmm.
biggest rewards are, right? That we're actually not just selling something, we're helping people.
Hmm.
That's my favorite part of this industry. That and when we do the veterans, we do a roof for a veteran every year, and that's always that's my favorite part of the business. So the give back and the helping others.
And as women, you are more caring than men as well. So, is there a moment or any times where you felt that your care or your concerns for these homeowners or your feminine care that you have built in naturally is kind of hindering your way of getting over this particular project or the decline of this claim because you tried your best but it just can't happen?
No, and I'm gonna say that with confidence because I also know when
Huh?
to turn it off. Listen,
Hmm.
don't get it wrong. I can be cutthroat and ruthless too. I know when to create that boundary and say, all right, enough's enough. Listen, if you're not going to do this, then you're going to pay this consequence for it, and that's that. Same thing with my husband. He works for a different company. I'll steal a job from him in a heartbeat. I got no problem with that. So don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. I do have a heart, and I like to think that my feminine energy does come in, but I also know when to turn that off at a
Hmm.
light switch and
Hmm.
bring it to the table whenever I need to bring it. So, um,
And how did you
fairly
learn that?
just life, I think. Like you said, just the things we've gone through, just seeing how cutthroat, working with other men in the industry, knowing kind of what's going to work, what's not going to work, and when to turn it off and be like, all right, it's time to play hardball. You have to be that way. Otherwise, you're not going to be successful. People are just going to walk all over you and take advantage of you.
Yes. And you also mentioned that you are part of National Women in Roofing. So, what role is that organization playing in particular, considering uh, the awareness and bringing or encouraging women to enter into this industry?
It plays a huge role. They have meetings every month. There's a trip that you go on where everybody that's in the organization kind of meets and we have a conference. It's been super supportive. You have someone to talk to about the things you can't talk to the men in your counterparts in the industry or in your business with you. You get to have that support and ask them how they're handling specific situations, kind of take things away from there. And you know that you have a support system to go to should something happen, or if you're not feeling as confident in your position or in your role. They can give you great tools to help you grow, the growth that you may need. And also, we do a lot of networking. So maybe we grow from one position and we go into a different part of the industry at the help of our female counterparts. So it's great to have. And every year it gets bigger and bigger, and there's more and more women. So I love it. It's fantastic.
And how is being into an industry that requires 100% of you, and you are a mother as well, a wife as well, so how do you handle that part? Because what I believe, I am not married and I don't have kids, that a mother's love cannot be found anywhere else, and at times your kids need you. So how did you handle that part, and what advice do you have for the ladies who are into this, like who are the Shawn that 10 years back you were? So how would you handle all of that, and what advice would you give to them?
So my situation was a little different because I had my children very young. I don't
Hmm.
recommend anybody have their kids as young as I did. I had my son when I was 17, right? So, and my middle child, I had her when I was 19, and then my youngest child when I was in my early 20s. So I had the time to be home and raise my kids. I was in the workforce, and then I pulled myself out of the workforce for a few years to get my son situated, stayed home with my children. And that's when I made the decision to get back into the workforce and got the job at my husband's company. So my situation is a little bit different. I would not, and I was very lucky, that I had and blessed that I was able to have the support that I did and grow from where I did, because that's not common in the industry. But I would recommend someone not do it like that, perhaps, and go to school, get an education, whether it's business management, or what have you, and get a good foundation behind you before you enter the industry and then kind of figure out where you want to enter, so that way you're prepared instead of just learning everything by a whim. So I don't recommend someone get in the industry the way that I did.
Do you also feel like I know some women who are single moms and they have a hard time managing the work life and their kids at home? So do you feel that a woman, if she has kids and she has a family, she should do some research before entering into the industry, that what department she has to work with? Like, is it going to be sales or the field work or the finance? And she can learn that particular department that suits her lifestyle, and then she can pursue that.
Yeah, definitely. It's so hard. It's going to depend on your personal situation and the support system that you have and who you work for. My kids are grown now, so I can pour myself into my career. They still need me, don't get me wrong. I make myself available by phone. I still meet with them for dinner and all that jazz. And I have grandchildren, actually. So I have one night during the week that I take my grandchildren no matter what. My boss is very family oriented. He has two young kids as well, and he knows family first. That plays a big part of it. You have to, if you're working for somebody, you want to work for someone that's understanding to that, that's going to appreciate and respect that you do have a life and a family outside of your work family, right? So that's really important.
And like You mentioned that you have a life besides this work life as well, and what I see is that both in men and women, it is being promoted that you have to be in that constant grind 24 by 7. You just end up nowhere, like when you are 35 or 40 and you have done all of these things, but you have that emptiness inside of you and you have no one around to share that emptiness as well, or to talk about it, or the people that you work with, they kind of collaborate with you, but at the same time they have their own families as well. So how do you see all this situation?
It takes a special kind of person. You have to have balance, and it's not easy. It's hard. And that's kind of, it'll make you break you. And that's kind of how you figure out who's got what it takes and who doesn't, right? Because you have to be organized. And you're right. I am on call 24/7. I'm always willing to grind. I'll step away from the table at dinner to pick up the phone. I'm very blessed in the fact that my husband's in the same industry. So it doesn't bother him if I have to excuse myself or take a call or something such as that. We both eat, breathe, and live roofing all the time. So it just almost becomes, you adopt it. It almost becomes your norm, right? But you have to create a boundary of time for yourself. You have to have self-care in things that you do for yourself to keep yourself mentally strong and healthy. And you have to be organized and organize your time. If you are weak in that area and you are not able to do that, you will not make it. You will burn out and you will end up out of the industry for sure.
Are you saying that women in roofing or men in roofing should also marry men in roofing and women in roofing, vice versa, like doctors
Okay.
do?
No, I think that I can't help but give my husband credit because he's really
Huh,
paved a lot of the way for
hmm,
me. You know what I mean? I wouldn't be in this industry if it wasn't for him because I got the
hmm,
job answering phones because of him. I think I still would have done something pretty good. You know, I like to
hmm,
think that I still would have been successful at whatever I would have put my mind to. But, you know, that's what I have to offer. That's what I'm very lucky and blessed that I have that support system where if
hmm,
someone who doesn't, you know, you just have to have real
hmm,
conversations with your spouse and your
hmm,
family and let them know, listen, I got to hustle for like the next couple years to be successful. You know, you're going to
hmm,
have to just put up with this night and day until I get myself
hmm,
to a financial aspect that I'm able to kind of
hmm,
shut it off for a little while and have that separate time with you. You like the big vacations? Do you like driving a nice car? Do you like money in your account? Then this is what I need to
hmm.
do and able to provide that, you know? And either that person's going to stick with you or they're not, you know? So that's kind of how I look at it.
Okay. As we are heading towards the end of this interview, I just have two or three more questions left for you. I want to come back to boundaries because you mentioned two or three times that you have predefined boundaries in your brain. So, what are these boundaries? And let's just say, what are the two or three top boundaries or borders that a woman should have in roofing that cannot be compromised anyway?
I definitely think one boundary should be how much you're willing to tolerate before you tell someone to kick rocks, right? So, like, everybody's boundaries are different. Everybody's limits of what they're willing to tolerate are going to be different. My skin is pretty thick, so sometimes maybe I let it go a little bit too far before I finally say enough's enough. But know your boundary of when you're either being abused, taken advantage of, mistreated, disrespected, and let them know real quick that you're not going to tolerate that and gain their respect from that. That's definitely a really important boundary to have.
Hmm.
Trying to think subject matter wise boundaries. And like you said, boundaries with your time and your family. You know, some of us are workaholics and you kind of have to create boundaries within yourself, with
Hmm.
yourself to know when to turn off the clock and kind of be like, I need to go home. I need to go to the gym. I need to go make my husband dinner. I need to go, you know, see friends because we still need
Hmm.
to nurture our relationships with people, right?
Hmm.
That's really important as well. So I don't know if
And
that answers the question.
that pretty much answers my question. How do you see that part that, like you just mentioned, that you have to know in your mind that you have to cook, make your husband your dinner? But what I see now, like your generation is quite different. And now when women have this money, they feel that we are independent and we don't need men anymore. So what is
Mhm.
your take on that?
And don't get me wrong, my husband makes me dinner
Yes.
also. I just want to
Yes,
say that.
that is fine. Yes.
It is a different generation. You're 100% right. I feel like I'm in the middle of that, which is why I love having such a different dynamic of age groups that I manage because I learn so much from the younger group versus the older group, which keeps me super grounded. You know, it's whatever's in, the rules still apply to someone who's single or someone who's male or female, regardless if you have children or if you have a family or not, you still may have time you want to go spend with your dog. Maybe you want to take your dog to the park, or maybe you have really good friends that your sister or your nieces or nephews, like it doesn't
mm,
matter if you have kids or don't have kids, like your time is
mm,
still valuable, right? You're still a human being and we all still need downtime to nurture our
mm,
soul, our spirit, just our humanity and the things that we love. You have to have some
mm.
joy. You have to have contentment. Those are the things that are going to continue to fuel you as a human being. Otherwise, you're going to burn out and you're going to have nothing to offer anybody. So, regardless if you have kids or not have kids, those things are
Hmm.
still important, depending on your situation.
And just a few minutes back, you mentioned about leaders and managers. So I want to ask you, how do you feel women can become better managers and leaders
We
in
need to be
roofing?
better listeners. I'm trying to work on that myself. Sometimes I tend to have so much to say that I have to reel it back in, and I'm trying. My goal for this year with myself is to listen more. I think that that's really important because women, we like to talk a lot. We always have something to say. Men tend to be, and it's the truth, you know what I mean? And men tend to be the better listeners. So I think it's important for us as women to kind of just be quiet sometimes and listen to what maybe someone else is trying to say and help you understand maybe what's going on with that person, or the situation. So
And you
that's,
feel,
yeah.
but what I feel is that you have to recognize that we are in a game. Like in a game, we have different characters, and we have an avatar, and we click on that. It shows the strengths and weakness of those avatar, and then we have another character or an avatar. We click on it, and it shows the strengths and weakness of that avatar or character. I feel that in this world, particular, we have men and women as two genders, and we have two different avatars or characters here with totally different strengths and weaknesses. And maybe we are like some people in this generation are not kind of accepting that. So what is the point? Do you feel that you should accept that there are some things that men can do, women cannot do, and there are some things that women can do that men can never ever do?
Mohammed, that's a loaded question. You're going to get me in trouble. I feel, listen, men are
Hmm,
stronger than women, period. They
hmm,
are,
hmm, hmm,
in most cases.
hmm,
Obviously everybody's genetics are different, but men are physically stronger than women.
hmm,
I think most
hmm.
women are mentally stronger than men.
I agree.
I believe in God, so I feel like, we're designed a specific way for a reason. And we fit
Hmm,
together because we're meant to balance each other, right? So that's why I feel like it's okay for men and women to work together, because you might be strong where I'm weak. And then you
hmm,
carry each other. And once you accept
hmm,
that and you
hmm,
kind of help each other work on your weaknesses to become
hmm,
strengths, you can be
hmm,
unstoppable in whatever you do. This
hmm,
generation, I don't know what to tell them.
hmm,
That's a loaded question. I guess
hmm,
it depends on what your beliefs are, what your thought process is. You know, I'm going to support someone that's a good person,
hmm,
regardless
hmm,
of what their religious beliefs are, what their personal beliefs are, because I feel like in a world like we're living in today,
hmm,
people are just going through so much and things are changing so rapidly, right
hmm,
and left. People are getting lost and they just need love and support. I think if you're a good person, then that's what's most
hmm.
important, right? Because that's what we need in the world, just good people helping
Yes.
people, and then the
Yes.
rest will kind of come. So
Yes.
that was my safe answer. I hope that was good.
The way I will put this is that what I personally feel is at the end of the day, it comes down to the ego. I have no problem in accepting that women are a lot stronger than men mentally and handling the emotional part, and men are stronger physically. So it is the nature that has created us this way, and there is no problem accepting that. My second last question to you, Shawn, is that if you could go back to your younger self, the one who just stepped into roofing, what would you tell her right now?
Wow. I don't know. That's oh goodness. I would tell myself so much. I would tell myself not to be afraid and to do it sooner. Don't let so much hold me back. Jump in with both feet. I have a tendency to do that anyways, but just go for it. Just don't let anything hold you back. I think that's probably what I would tell myself. If I was to tell my younger self before roofing some advice, I would probably tell that girl a lot. I don't know if I would be in roofing. I might have chased a different dream, but this is where I am. So this is what I'm good at, and this is what my profession has become. I think we all have
Hmm.
those daydreams about what I wanted to do as a child
Hmm.
versus what I'm actually doing.
Hmm.
Because you tell someone you're in roofing and they're like, that's a career. Yeah, I
Hmm.
didn't know that could be a career. That's a profession. Absolutely, it is. A lot of people don't realize that you
Hmm.
can have a career in this industry. I think I always saw myself in the courtroom, though. I wanted to be an attorney since I was a little girl.
You know, the principal of my high school, he recommended me to be an attorney as well, but I ended up being an engineer and then I ended up being in marketing. And every single day I feel that I should have been a lawyer.
Same. Sometimes I feel like I am a lawyer. So
Cool. Uh,
I wish, yeah.
Even my favorite show is Suits. It is a show of lawyers and how they handle this. I have watched the 9 seasons of it thrice, 3 times in my life, and I am just obsessed with the attorneys and what they do. My last question to you is maybe we can sit down another time and we can talk about the choices that we make and how they lead to the careers that we have and the professions that we have and how we can improve that. So my last question to you is, what is the best and the worst part of being a woman in roofing?
The best part is the rewards, like I said, watching these guys come in. And I have my first female actually sales rep starting in May. So I'm very excited about that. So we'll have to touch base on that again. But
Okay.
just watching these guys come in that have no confidence, that feel like they can't do anything, that are unsuccessful, and just giving
Hmm.
them the tools to help them become successful and watching them grow and change.
Hmm.
It's so rewarding. That's probably my favorite part of the business.
Hmm.
And then I think the worst part is just the opposite, watching someone that I know is capable of being successful just fall apart and just sink and just fall by the wayside and just have no future for themselves. It's sad. It happens, but it's sad.
Cool. We'll definitely sit down at the end of this year to discuss how your new sales rep is doing and what are the learnings that you will have at that time. Any signing off advice or notes that you have for the roofing industry overall?
Just keep hustling, hustle hard, hustle strong, don't give up, keep going, keep pushing. Everybody will always need a roof, so this industry is here to stay. And for any females out there, just keep doing your thing and don't give up and create yourself a good support system. And reach out to other women in the industry. Usually we're not
Hmm.
shy, we're happy to talk to each other.
Thank you so much for your time, Shawn. Hands down, this was the most enjoyed conversation that I had on this show till now. So, thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure having you here. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to talking to you again. You have a great day as
Thank you.
well.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye bye.